of the night phone calls rarely promise anything good. In my experience, they mean that someone has died, someone is stranded, or someone has to be bailed out of jail. On January, New Year's Eve, 2016, it was the news that our son, Jackson, had been in a car accident and was being rushed to the trauma unit at our local hospital. Jackson was a nuclear engineer on a Navy submarine, and he'd gotten home on leave just hours before. In typical adult child fashion, he had visited with us for an hour or two and then had met up with some friends down the coast to ring in the new year. One of the friends was a designated driver, and the plan was to camp overnight in his gutted, empty van. From what we know now, Jackson followed the plan, unrolling his sleeping bag in the back of the van and passing out. The others decided that it would be much more fun to continue the festivities at a party up a narrow, twisting canyon road. It's kind of amazing they made it as far as they did, given that when the police tested the designated driver, hours after the crash, his blood alcohol level was still over twice the legal limit. So when the twisty road went right, he went straight into a tree at 35 miles an hour. Our son, asleep in the back of the van, became a projectile. He was thrown forward to slam face first into the back of the front seats, then ricocheted off to smash back onto the floor. From there, it gets a little less clear, but here's what appears to have happened based on the Highway Patrol's investigation. The drunken idiots hauled him out of the van, dragged him across the ground, wrestled him into the back seat of another partygoer's car, and drove him to the hospital. Quick pause for a public service announcement. Never move an injured person. Ever. Wait for the professionals. At the hospital, the trauma doctors found that Jackson had a 7-inch gash exposing his skull from forehead to mid-scalp, a concussion, multiple broken ribs. His nose was shattered. His spine was broken in 2 places, and his spinal cord was damaged. He could neither move nor feel anything from the collarbones down. He was quadriplegic. And so began nearly 5 months of hospitalization and years of recovery. One memory that haunts my husband and me is watching our son turn cyanotic, the lovely word for the blue shade that comes over someone as they suffocate to death. Then being pushed out into the corridors and hearing the eerily calm voice saying, "Code blue, I see you. Code blue, I see you." But stories of recovery are ones for another time, because all of this was just to give you a background for why I hated Mikey, the designated driver who stole from Jackson his dreams of becoming a mountaineering guide and climbing the 7 summits. And I did. I hated him. If I had to be in the same room with him, I couldn't look at him. My mouth would take on that weaned on lemons look, because what I really wanted to do was spit in his face. I would daydream about what I wanted to happen to him. I would lie awake at night, imagining tortures just for him. The Spanish Inquisition had nothing on me. Oh. Every time I saw Mikey, I could hardly stand to look at him. That was not how Jackson felt. When Mikey asked to check in on him, first at the ICU and then at the VA spinal cord injury unit up in Palo Alto, Jackson welcomed the visits, laughing and talking and thoroughly enjoying himself. I couldn't understand it. Maybe there was even a part of me that disapproved of it, as if Jackson should feel as I did, angry, accusatory, unforgiving. I finally got up the moxie to ask, "How can you be so friendly with him?" Jackson's response? "Oh, he didn't mean it. Mikey's a good guy." You have got to be kidding me. He didn't mean it? Mikey kept visiting every chance he got. If I was in the room, he'd look at the floor, knowing the hatred he would see in my face. But he kept coming, doing for Jackson everything he could. Meanwhile, I walked around with an alligator gnawing at my heart. Then one day, he came to the house. Mikey stood in our living room and joked and laughed with Jackson. There was such a feeling of camaraderie. I watched Jackson and I thought to myself, if he can forgive, who am I to cling to my anger? I looked Mikey full in the face for the first time since the accident. He ducked his head as usual, but I walked up to him. I stood on my tiptoes. I wrapped my arms around him, and I gave him a squeeze. When I pulled away, he was grinning from ear to ear, and his eyes glittered with tears. And me, well, frankly, I was a little surprised I'd just done that. But at the same time, it was like, you know that moment in the animated version of How the Grinch Stole Christmas, when we see the Grinch's heart grow 3 sizes? It was like that. It was such a relief. I felt dizzy. That's when I finally understood the saying that forgiveness isn't for the other person, it's for yourself. As much as Mikey was moved by the hug I gave him, it was nothing compared to the relief I felt at finally letting go of the tightness of anger and unforgiveness. I want to be really clear about this. What I offered Mikey in that moment was compassion. To be specific, forgiveness is the act of offering empathy, compassion, and understanding to the other person. None of this let him off the hook for a disastrous drunk driving accident that left a 23-year-old paralyzed. The legal system charged, tried, and convicted him, and he did time for breaking the law. But that was completely independent of our family and the forgiveness that we found for him. Forgiving is an act of courage. It means letting go of the idea that you are personally responsible for making someone else suffer. In fact, it means letting go of the idea that that person should suffer. The experience that Mikey had by doing time wasn't so that he could suffer, but so that he could learn. It takes constant self-reflection and strength to find empathy, compassion, and understanding for someone who has hurt you or someone you love. For me, I surprised myself when I found my own strength. There's plenty of research that shows us there's a huge benefit, both physiologically and neurologically, to forgiveness. Deep-seated, long-lasting anger can become toxic. It takes a toll on the tissues around the heart, on our gut health, even on our immune systems. And what about our mental health? We hear all the time about the effects of chronic stress. The stress we experience from interpersonal conflict is intense and debilitating. Letting go of anger, hostility, and resentment actually makes us less anxious, less stressed. Our immune systems improve, and we can even have more energy for the good things in life. What I know is that letting go of my own anger, my hostility, my plans for a one-victim Sherry Inquisition has allowed me to open to the moments of love and togetherness that we have experienced as a family since January 2016. Had I been wrapped in a cloak of bitterness, could I have been present for Jackson as I have tried to be? I don't believe so. Scientists tell us that some people are naturally more forgiving than others. I think of Jackson immediately. But they also tell us that anyone can learn. Step one is simply to make the decision to let go of anger and resentment. There are several other practices, and I do emphasize the word practice, that can help. I'd like to offer you the chance to experience one that I have come to particularly love. It's a mindfulness-based practice called the Lovingkindness meditation. We'll do a slightly abbreviated version with some of my own little adjustments. So if you'd like to give it a try, close your eyes if you feel comfortable doing that, or take a neutral gaze to the floor. Take a deep breath. And as you let it out, feel yourself sinking into your chair. Call to mind the image of someone you care about. It can be a spouse, a child, a sibling, a friend, your pet. It doesn't matter. But hold the image in mind. Now think to that being silently. I wish you love with all my heart. I wish you joy with all my heart. I wish you peace with all my heart. Let the image of that being go. Take another deep breath. And as you let it out, feel yourself sinking even more deeply into your chair. Now call to mind the image of someone you're less than fond of. If this is the first time you've ever done this exercise, don't pick the worst person you know. Just go with someone who's mildly annoying. But hold that image in mind. And now think to that person. I wish you love with all my heart. I wish you joy with all my heart. I wish you peace with all my heart. Let the image of that being go. Take another deep breath. And when you're ready, open your eyes. That might have been challenging, but check in with your body. How does it feel? Do you feel a little more relaxed? Maybe lighter of heart? The people you love and care about will feel that change in you too. The absolute truth is that your forgiveness helps not only you, but your extended circle, and their extended circle, and their extended circle, in a virtuous expanding cycle of empathy, compassion, and understanding. And that is a life change worth embracing.